Morning has always been my favorite time of day. I usually arrive before the other teachers when the halls are still quiet and the only sound is my footsteps, echoing softly against the polished wooden floor. I love the way the morning sunlight slowly slips in through the large windows at the end of the hallway, forming golden curtains of light that feel calming. Every time I open the door to my classroom, room 12, I always feel a warmth I can't quite explain, as if the room itself is welcoming me. Inside are colorful posters, bookshelves filled with stories I personally selected, and a reading corner called the Starlight Spot, packed with cloud-shaped pillows and tiny star-like lights. My students love gathering there before class starts, chatting and showing each other their favorite books. That day seemed just like any other, quiet, comfortable, familiar, with no hint that something strange was waiting to be found. But it was precisely behind that calm where everything slowly began to change. That morning, just as I set my bag on the teacher's desk, I heard something that made me stop. A small sound, like something light shifting inside one of the students' desks. At first, I thought it was just a tilted book or a pencil falling. Room 12 did have old wooden desks that often made random noises, but this time it was different. Soft, yet distinct, like a deliberate movement. I walked slowly toward the row of desks in the middle of the room. The morning light fell between the chairs, casting long shadows that seemed to move with my footsteps. The sound came again, this time from the desk belonging to a boy named Noah, a quiet kid who usually arrived the earliest. "Noah," I called reflexively, even though I knew the room was empty. No answer. Of course. My heartbeat quickened. I didn't know why, but something inside me pushed me to open that drawer, even though there was no logical reason to feel tense. A student desk drawer had never been a strange place. Usually it held books, crayons, maybe a small note. But when my hand touched the handle, something made me pause. The drawer felt warm, as if someone or something had just been holding it from the inside. I took a slow breath and opened it carefully. Inside, there were no books, no pencils, no school supplies. There was only a single sheet of paper, neatly folded, placed perfectly in the center, as if it had been deliberately positioned for me to find. But what made my skin prickle wasn't the paper itself. It was the small writing in the corner. "For Miss Clark, don't let her out." I froze. Who wrote this, and who was her? For the first time since I began teaching in room 12, the space didn't feel warm. It didn't feel safe. It didn't feel like the room I knew. The room suddenly felt as if it were holding its breath, waiting for me to act. And because of that mix of curiosity and anxiety, I made a choice I wouldn't normally make. I unfolded the paper. The writing inside contained only one short sentence, yet it felt far heavier than any simple student message. "She doesn't like mornings. Don't let her wake up." I swallowed. Who was she? Why was this written to me? And most troubling, why was this paper in Noah's desk? I stood there for a moment, trying to steady my breathing, trying to convince myself there was a rational explanation. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe Noah or another student was trying to pull a prank. But Noah wasn't the type to fool around. And the handwriting on the paper looked too neat, too intentional, too serious. As I held the paper longer, I realized something that unsettled me even more. The paper felt warm, just like the drawer handle earlier, as if it had just been held by someone or had just come out of somewhere it shouldn't have been. I quickly tucked the paper into the pocket of my work skirt. I didn't want any students to see it when they arrived. Just as I turned away from Noah's desk, I heard a small tapping at one of the classroom windows. A gentle tap, like someone trying to get my attention. I turned quickly. The window was shut tight. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains, and there was nothing outside. No students, no parents, no school staff. Only the old maple tree standing in the yard, its leaves swaying softly in the wind. Then, the tapping came again, twice. Soft, rhythmic, and sounding as if it came from inside the room, not outside. My heartbeat sped up. I began to realize the note in Noah's desk wasn't just a warning, it might also be a clue. There was something in room 12, and I had no idea where she was. In that confusion, I made one decision. I had to find Noah. He was the only one who might know who or what wasn't supposed to wake up. But before I could step out of the room, I heard something that stopped me again. A chair at the back of the room moved on its own, slowly, a small scrape, as if someone had just sat down. I froze, unable to take even one step. The chair was in the very back row, a row rarely chosen by students because it was slightly darker and farther from the windows. The morning light didn't quite reach that area, making the corner look dimmer than usual. I held my breath. There was no one there, at least not visibly, but I knew the sound of a chair being dragged was real, too clear to ignore. With slow, cautious steps, I approached the back of the room. Each footstep made the wooden floor pop softly, which only added to the strange atmosphere. A meter away from the chair, I saw something that made the back of my neck tighten. The chair was turned around. It had been facing the board earlier. Someone, or something, had turned it. On the desk, right in front of that chair, there was something new, something I was certain hadn't been there when I first entered that morning. A small black cube, about the size of a notepad, with a glossy surface and no markings. I stepped closer, looking for clues. No stamp, no stickers, no labels. Just a plain, perfectly smooth black cube that looked completely out of place in a classroom. When I reached out my hand to touch it, just to make sure it was real, the cube suddenly vibrated softly, as if reacting to my presence. I jerked back half a step. A second later, the cube emitted something I had never heard before. A whisper, soft, almost like the voice of a child. "I'm awake." I froze, my body locked. The whisper was so close, like it came from inside my head. But I knew it came from the cube. Something like that shouldn't be able to speak, let alone with a voice so clear and tinged with a suppressed giggle. Then a second whisper followed, softer, clearer. "Miss Clark, you're late." My chest tightened. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what had woken up. I only knew the message in Noah's drawer wasn't an empty warning. Something in this classroom had awakened, and it was looking for me. The shadow crawled forward slowly, like a thin mist trying to form its own shape. Within seconds, it was only a few steps away from me. I backed up, but my spine hit the edge of the teacher's desk. There was nowhere left to go. "Noah, stop," I whispered, almost pleading. He looked at me, and for the first time since he appeared in the doorway, doubt flickered in his eyes. For a moment, he looked like the Noah I knew, the little boy who loved comic books and always smiled shyly whenever he got praised. "She doesn't want to hurt you," he said softly. "She's just lonely." That word, lonely, hit deeper than I expected, briefly halting my fear. The shadow stopped moving, as if the word affected it too. And slowly, I realized something. This thing, this entity, whatever it was, wasn't trying to frighten me. It was searching for someone. someone willing to understand. Breathing still unsteady, I loosened my grip on the edge of the desk. Then slowly I said, "I'm here, but I can only help if you stop scaring me." The shadow seemed to respond, moving more gently, its form shrinking, thinning, dissolving into small, drifting particles. The black cube glowed faintly, not with a bright light, but with a warm glow like an old library lamp. Noah finally stepped closer. He placed his hand on the cube, and for the first time, the whispering sounds faded completely. "She just wants to go home," Noah said softly. "And she chose you, Miss Clark, because you always take care of everyone." I almost cried, not from fear, but from the sorrow in Noah's voice, or in the voice of whatever was speaking through him. I touched the cube carefully. "All right," I whispered. "If you want to go home, I'll help you." The warm light from the cube spread gently, covering the room, washing away the shadows that had felt so foreign a moment before. The light then gathered, shrinking, and slipped entirely back into the cube. The cube stopped vibrating, stopped whispering. Now it was just an ordinary object, as if everything that had happened was nothing more than a strange dream. Noah exhaled with relief and gave me a small smile, the smile of a child who had finally returned to himself. "Thank you, Miss Clark," he said. "She's calm now." The room returned to silence, but for the first time since that morning, the silence felt safe. That day became one I would never forget, not because of the fear I experienced, but because I learned something I had never considered before. Sometimes, what looks terrifying only needs a place to be understood. I now keep the black cube in the school's archive cabinet, stored carefully and never opened again. It has never made another sound, never glowed, never moved, as if everything is truly over. Noah went back to being the quiet, cheerful boy he always was. He never spoke about that day again, and I chose not to push him. Room 12 returned to being a room filled with light, laughter, and warmth. But every morning, I still take a moment to stand in the center of the classroom, reminding myself that sometimes the things we fear only need someone willing to listen. And that day, I decided I would always be that person.